Good evening, everyone. Once again, my name is Jegede Osayuki, and today we'll be talking about the choral, the casts, and the grooves, Benin culture as facade language. And the main idea behind this topic was to talk about creating new design languages for architectural facades for our buildings in such a way that our buildings can also represent our culture, us as a people, not just a neocolonial point of view or just, um, you know, the generic way of following the international style. So, first, Owokia, that is welcome in Benin. And considering we are going to be talking highly about this design language from the point of view of the Benin culture. So, welcome to this presentation, and I hope that we learn something. So, why facades and why now? First, architecture is more than shelter, it's cultural narrative. Um, in the process of learning architecture, a lot of architecture discourse, you hear statements like um, the culture of the people is distilled in its architecture, or the architecture of a place tells you about the culture of those people. What would happen if we designed buildings that spoke Ishan, Amedo's talking about Edo cultures and languages? What happens now if we can design these kind of buildings? What would happen? So, what's the identity of the Benin people? Just a general background. Picture here is one of the art pieces by Taye Idaho, called the Ivie series. Now, Ivie in Benin is coral bead and or any type of coral bead really. And at the end of the day, it means honor. So the history of the Benin people has been is very, very tied with honor and power hierarchy. There was a highly centralized power. It was governed by the Oba, who was divine and man at the same time. The palace was both politically aligned, was also spiritually aligned. There was all these things mixed together. The artwork of the people, there was bronze mastery. We have world famous lost wax casting and reliefs that represented our history. I always tell people that these bronze plaques, these bronze statues were our hieroglyphics, unlike and they were used as a way to transfer our history forward. So when even someone comes to say that, oh, Africans don't write, I'm like, what are you saying? We just wrote in a different script, and that's what you failed to recognize. Choral was also a royal code in the Benin's. For the Benin's, we find out that a lot of the Oba is his royal regalia is heavily beaded. The same thing with the wives. The Benin custom for marriage is a heavily beaded affair. Like red coral beads are not just red, there's also the whites. Are hold such a high significance in the culture that it still has its own mythos behind it. And there's also the sacred urbanism for the culture. Cities were planned around shrines, processional routes, and there was also the hierarchical compound system. A lot of all of this was tied within the culture. The culture translated itself into the planning. It also translated itself into the architecture in terms of the way the houses were built, the way the houses would look, the way the houses were used. There was also strong spiritual continuity. Then grooved architecture. There was also the unique red earth grooved walls that are common all over Benin. It's unique to the culture. And but all of this was proceeding beautifully until colonial disruption. That was the 1897 punitive expedition, and it caused a break in the transfer of knowledge, transfer of culture, and transfer of history, power. And I hate to end the discussion of the culture there. So how do we continue this discussion for, how do we push this forward, discussion forward? How do we continue culture? If we are to preserve culture, we must continue to make it. Now, how do we translate culture from symbol to system? Because we're not trying to just say, oh, okay, this culture, and then just repeat the same thing. There are so many things that we can draw from, and there are so many things that we can distill to create these systems of new facades, new forms, and new aesthetic identities. The focus is aesthetics, identity, and sustainability, not just nostalgia. It's not to just say, oh, okay, this was what we're doing in the past, so we should do it again. Nah, it's to push that conversation forward, to seek a design theory that is modular, context aware, scalable, and also symbolically rich. The picture here is the Idia by Nate Robert Eze. He submitted this to the CPDI Africa, one of the CPDI Africa competitions, and it was inspired by the beads of the Edo people and also Queen Idia, who was a warrior queen, and that was what gave the building its form. So let's talk about, through this, I'm going to talk about like 3 examples of where we can distill ideas from. And the first one is going to be Evier coral beads. And this speaks to modularity, layering, and ornaments. If you can see on my hands here, that's this is a coral bead. The red ones, they're called Ibebu, and that actually translates to red coral beads, or beads from the white man, because they are not locally found here, but there's a whole history of bringing them in and wrapped with its own spirituality. So when you take this simple form and you try and push it forward, you can take design cues from texture. The thing about beads, they're highly textured, and coral beads are highly textured. There's also repetition, continuous repetition. There's a rhythm, there's vertical layering. The spiritual significance or the cultural significance of Evier is wealth, royalty, protection. It layers itself in so many different ways, and you can still translate those kind of ideas further. And you can apply this in so many ways. Panels, column wraps, fenestrations, rhythm, and so much. If you could look at this image right here, which is the design I did, it was modeled after the Odigba collar from the, worn by the Oba and High Chiefs, and it follows actually this movement of beads from the chest all the way to the waist. And you can see the panels are made after those forms, abstracted and made into this continuous repeating rhythm that now forms this, almost like a song. Also the building by Nate, where he took the multi-layeredness of beads, stacking of beads, and took those the holes found in between to create this pattern and this casing of the building, which actually a lot of people think it is an earth material that he proposed for this, but it's actually wood, which is very interesting. So many different ways. You could even scale it down to just having a wall, a small wall, and just creating a beaded pattern on that. So just think modularity, think layering, and also think ornament when you think about beads in this situation. Then we can also talk about bronze cast patterns, relief, storytelling, iconography. Big part of the Benin culture was heavy on bronze casting, art pieces, carving. So you can translate that forward into the new design language and take cues to create things that, bring in that relief texture, talk about narrative bas reliefs. You can abstract and create different things. There's so many examples all over the city where you'd see, even to this day, where people make the front of their house and create this relief wall with different images, and that's the language of design there. So you could take that, push it a step forward, and it's not just to create a symbol of memory or mythology or prestige. You could also use it to translate other things, because these can also become records of our history and our past. And you can apply them in so many different ways. It doesn't actually have to just be a wall. It has been used on doors, it has been used on windows. You could scale it down, use it on screens, include it as a shading device, create textured cladding. And all of this is possible like through the analog method, or even going digital, CNC routing. You can do analog casting, like the local casting, or straight up 3D printing. The sky is the limit, really, or is it? Then we also talk about grooves and bands. Now, traditionally in Benin architecture, there's a symbol of the architecture, or rather, there's something peculiar to a lot of old traditional houses in Benin. They had these grooves, and these grooves traditionally were made with snail shell and some other materials too, but you generally different sizes of snail shells. And by creating this repeating pattern, it's always created a very interesting form. Now, imagine taking that a step forward. One of the pictures here is the design by Dimas Umoko, which is the Obakenswa Heritage Center. That's on the right, top right. And he took these images or these bands that were just, plain and regular on rectangular buildings, not particularly even cleaned up, just, rough in a way, and polished that up to create a new, interesting form, or to create a new rhythm, or on this otherwise basic circular form. But by including this, it has transformed that from just a regular wall to something that has movement, and something that has character, and gives it a nice quality. It's an age-old tradition, but it doesn't have to be stuck in tradition. You can always push it forward. And the beautiful thing about it is you could easily adapt this even into contemporary designs, because if it's a lot of contemporary designs do use grooves, sweeps, and reveals in very interesting ways. But by the time you can start comparing both, you can then say, okay, I want to meld this with this and create something beautiful. So it's a minimalist expression of time and tactility. It could be applied on round earth. It doesn't even have to be an actual groove anymore. You could just take the repeating patterns. Like round earth itself actually creates various gradations depending on how you construct it. You could put it on stucco, you could put it on cement plaster, you could even work with terracotta. You could mix the groove widths to suggest hierarchy, procession, just to play with it, really. So, taking all of this in mind, how do we now push towards a Benin-inspired facade methodology? I came up with a toolkit that I use when I'm trying to design Benin-inspired homes, facades, things like that. Over time, I've been able to say, okay, if I want to make a new facade design, where do I start? I kind of start with the inspiration source. So that could be anything, really. It could even be a story. It could be something symbolic, tangible. It could be something that's up there in the ether. It doesn't naturally have a physical expression, but you start figuring out a way to distill it. But what's most important is that it should be rooted in cultural meaning. It's not just aesthetic appeal. It's not just because it's fine. If not, you would actually, I found out that if you do that, you usually end up at ports before arriving at your destination. You kind of fall off. Then you take this inspiration source and you abstract it. Especially in situations, majority of the inspiration forms sources you find out that they cannot just be replicated on a building, boom, like that. So you have to start distilling what the essence is. Think about the usable geometry, simplify it, or even stylize it, recompose the whole thing, and try and create something new. Can you repeat it? Can you scale it? This is when you should start thinking about rhythm, proportion, figure and ground, silhouette, motif. also the structure. And you should also want to try and create your own personal interpretation for this. For instance, you could see the building by Nate and my own building. Both of them are actually designed using beats as the inspiration source, but they came out in two different ways. So you might actually want to put your own spin on that. Then you start thinking about material choice. How do we bridge the meaning and push that into performance? Uh, these materials should support form, but also support environmental logic. You shouldn't just be thinking and randomly want to just do something because you're trying to say it should be, traditionally inspired architecture. You could work with things like round earth. You could still work with bronze, metal, terracotta, different things. But at the end of the day, you need to choose materials that echo um, originality, but also suits the modern use and context, including sustainability. Then we should be thinking cultural resonance. After you've gotten your material choice, you should now be thinking, how do we ensure that what it is that we're designing actually speaks culture fluently? It's not just at the end of after you've done 1, 2, 3, what you're designing or what you're proposing should not just be something that is 1% culture that is good until you are there to explain it in the deepest details. Nobody can understand it. So we should still try and make sure that it is still able to pass that knowledge across or pass that feeling across. What does this gesture mean to the community or user group? Can they identify with it? Does it align with any identity? Does it align with memory? Does it align with spiritual coding? Does it have a narrative relevance? So what validates design at the end of the day is more than just the surface. It has to become cultural infrastructure, not just in preserving, but also building the culture and pushing it forward, translating it into the new age. Now, by here, we're now thinking, how are we now going to fabricate this? How are we going to make this thing that we have made that's from an inspiration source? We've abstracted the form, we've chosen the material, and we've made sure that it's resonating with the culture. Next, you should be thinking fabrication routes. Are you going to use an analog means that's local brick and mortar, or getting artisans to do it by hand? Are you going to go digital, or are you going to work with a hybrid? Are you going to use traditional carving, or are you going to use CNC milling? Are you going to use 3D printing, or are you going to cast modular prefabricated panels? Can you scale it from artisan methods to industrial production, depending on the context that you're working with? So this is actually where innovation starts to elevate meaning. It's not just locking things in the past, but actually pushing them forward. And I believe, I know, I have observed that if you consider all these 5 keys, you would definitely end up with a well-inspired facade that would actually communicate the culture that you are trying to push. So, finally, it's more than just creating facades that speak about culture. It's more than building grand entrances. It's to build memory. It's to build a space for people to be inspired also. Because facade language is a bridge. It bridges culture, public life, and so much more. Because at the end of the day, the facade is actually the first thing you see before you get into the building. So it's also acts as a way to welcome people in. It has a way of speaking about what is within it. So facade language can help to create new discourse for people. Now, Benin is one origin. There are so many others. Just in Edo State alone, there are about 8 tribes at the very minimum. There's Benin, there's Ishan, there's Isako, and there's so many more. So why limit yourself to Benin? I might be limiting myself here in a way because I am from Benin, but so many other people. If I check the member list of this call, We see so many different surnames. People from the north, people from the south, people from the west, people from the east. So this is where I come from, and I think that you should also be able to do more coming from where you are coming from. Finally, Wesley, guys, thank you very much for being a part of this presentation. Thank you for giving me your ears, and I do hope that we've learned something very beautiful today, and we can then go back and practice using all of these. So, explore, iterate, and evolve. Thank you very much. The floor will now be open for questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. But first of all, I want to apologize for the start. It was due to technical glitch that we experienced, and we had to, thank God finally we overcame. And it's one of the reasons why, it's the reason why we started a little bit later than usual. It's not intentional in any way. We want to once again sincerely apologize for that. So the section we're in now is the question section, but if you don't feel like talking, asking your questions, just unmute your mic to ask your questions. You might want to type them in the chat box, and then we read them. But it's a very interesting conversation that we are having. It's also a part of it, but one of the things that is really interesting nowadays, in about 2-3 weeks ago, was the repatriation of some of these stolen artifacts and items from Africa. I see you kids laughing. It's interesting that we are still on it in the year 2025, but that's not the topic for discussion. But I just said to mention that, because it's the conversation really cannot be complete without making mention of that. And concerning the beads, I'm most interested in the toolkit, because for some reason it's interesting that so many people would have an idea, but especially when it comes to designing using the cultural elements, things that are indigenous to a certain kind of people, and don't know how to translate it. And it's interesting to see that you have a toolkit that I'm sure that whoever it is that wants to use it, of course, with permission, can use it. So so that I don't talk too much, I want you to ask questions. If there's anybody who has questions, just unmute your mic and then ask your question. I'm also in the chat box to see if we have any questions, but I haven't seen any questions typed.
Okay, I see has a question. So, Mr. Ibuka, please go ahead and ask your question. You're on mute too.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
Really Oye.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me also from here?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry for the disruption. I'm on my way, so a little bit of noise. I've enjoyed the conversation so far, and as an enthusiast, I do love cultures, and so I mean that this conversation so far just brings memory of how our culture can be integrated into contemporary designs to make wonderful designs that are. Sorry, are you still hear me? Okay, because I'm hearing some echoes from this end. And as I was saying, I just want to ask this question. Is there a way to make this particular culture, like bridging the old culture, the traditions, the elements of those past, bringing it into the school system now, and making the new age architects, the future architects, kind of see sense in it? Because most time when you're trying to convince them, they will just look at you. We are talking about lyrics, relics. That those things are past. We are in new age where we have AI and all those things. So I don't know if there's a way, like, to systematically bring those things into the school system, maybe in form of exhibitions, like let's say not even pictures, only models of those things, so they will believe that these designs can be done not only on screen, but in reality they can see that and be motivated by it. So that is just my question. How can we bring those things from the past and bring them into the present and let these young architects kind of endear themselves to this kind of designs? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Jede. It's beautiful to also know that you're
Please raise your hand. Royal Ebuka Onyenemem. If you can hear me, please unmute your mic and speak, please.
Thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate the talk. It was nice, and actually it made me had a lot of things on my mind when I was listening. My name is Royal Ebuka Onyemenam. I'm a graduate of University of Nigeria, Enugu, in Nsukka. That's my BSc and my MSc as well. So I saw this advert of the lecture and I showed interest. And thank God the link was sent to me and I joined, though I waited. But then when you started the lecture and I saw the mold, the vessels at the beginning of the lecture, I was thinking you were going to go towards the direction of, let's say, the Greek wonders, how some of these artworks could be molded as reliefs on the walls. But the direction with which you went was a bit more contemporary and more how will I say, more adaptable to our modern society. And I will really give you that. You really did your homework and it was nice. Thank you so much. But then my question is, you know the way when you go for an art exhibition, at times for you to understand the artwork, you will need the artist by your side or someone who understands the art to start explaining it for you. So were it not for your explanation, a normal person wouldn't have been able to understand that you're building. Yes, they will understand the beat, but without that your explanation, the whole thing will not go home well. So is there a way these customs and culture can be translated to a design in such a way that the layman would interpret it without anybody being able to explain that, without needing anybody by his side to explain it to him? Just by mere seeing it, he will get at least 80% of the meaning being communicated by choosing that choice of facade. Please, do you understand my question?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, those were very beautiful questions, and I think I would start with your question, Mr. Royal. It's a very interesting place you're coming from. First, I would like to start with this. The beautiful thing about art pieces, and even in this case, architecture or this translating of culture, is that everybody is coming from their own different points. Now, I love arts. I have a lot of friends that are artists, and when they make their works, me that's there and I'm sitting down there watching them do the art pieces, and they're explaining it to me. I'm like, oh wow, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool, that's cool. But a lot of artists will also tell you that one of the most beautiful things about displaying their art pieces is that people give it its own meaning in their own ways. And you find out that some things do get translated over. And from what you even said, I was very glad that something was able to translate over from the building. You said that the layman would easily be able to identify it as beads. And that's beautiful. That was the whole point. All the extra layers behind it was meant to be discovered. Because I feel, at least this is just my own philosophy though, but I think it's very interesting one too. I feel that for this kind of jobs or this kind of works, you have different levels to them. But one of the sweetest levels to work with is where you can create a taste and draw people in to want to learn more. Now, this design was made for Benin. Essentially, it was made for Benin people. Not like it's not racist or ethnicist in any way, please. The main idea behind the building was to create. So the name of the building is Iviedo, which was a recoining of the Iviebo, which is the red coral bead, but now saying Iviedo, which is Edo's bead. So the main idea I was trying to pass across was trying to just say, okay, Edo States, imagine a personified Edo female now, and you're giving her a bead. And say, okay, this is Edo's bead. As long as that was passed across, I'm good to go. I'm very good to go. But the deeper meanings would be learned over time as you interact with the building. You start seeing, because this is actually just a macro view. In the design of the building, there were so many other small nuances, like the walls were grooved, some walls were grooved, and some walls actually had, if I could go back to, where's that picture? The picture of the leopard. Now, some things would come very easy to a Benin person. It's not going to be hard for them to think about it. They will understand it very like this. They're just understanding. But somebody outside the culture might not be so easy. So it's kind of like a slow way, because you can't just give everybody the information once. Some things have to still be codified. So you actually want to learn. But if you don't want to learn, you at least walk away with something. So that's where I stand philosophically on these kind of ideas. But it's not still a bad thing for you to want to create a very, very, very simplified version that shows all it wants to show immediately. That's not bad. I feel every culture can do that, and every culture can also do the codified way. It's just how you choose to express it. The building by the Masumoko, or rather, this building by Eze, the Idia. If you were to actually search the word Idia, Queen Idia, you would end up finding that the form of the building, that weird rectangular thing in front that has the slice, as it was cut up, resembles the bust of Queen Lydia, or sorry, the bronze head of Queen Lydia. That's where he got his form finding from, apart from the beads. So many different ways of showing it. Like here in bronze cast and patterns, that's easily identified as an oba. There's really no, it's not hard to figure that out there. The moment anybody sees it and has seen an oba before, you know, oh, that thing there is an oba. So the person is trying to show that. But for somebody outside looking at the building right beside it, that's the next one, which is in black and white, you can see the grooves in some places, which was the contemporary flair. But on the side wall, that's the long wall, there's a pattern there. And that pattern is found all over beneath bronze casting. But if you're not used to seeing those images, you might not see it. But at the very least, when you do look at it, you'll be like, oh, that's beautiful. That's an interesting pattern. And if you want to know more, it's easy for you to find out more. So that's my own stance. But I feel everybody can still work with theirs. One of the most simple versions of this would be the grooves. If you are not Benin, you're just going to see grooves. And if you are Benin or adjunct to the culture, you know about the culture, you're able to recognize that, oh, these grooves are not just grooves, they are also specifically colored in red or white or both. That kind of draws or it starts painting an image for you. If you actually to drive through Benin City, you would see a lot of, or let me not say a lot because they've started demolishing them and all of that, but you'd see buildings that have this color scheme and they exist traditionally, or rather in the traditional sense. And even the Akenzuwa Center, which was a modern retelling of that, you'll be able to start drawing your similarities and lines. At the end of the day, like what I talked about cultural resonance there, it really what really validates the design is that it aligns with an identity, a memory, a spiritual coding, or a narrative relevance. It should mean something to a particular group. It may not mean something to everybody, but it should mean something to a particular group. And if you can give that group a meaning, they themselves would actually start telling that story for you. So you might not necessarily be able to tell the story to everybody, but you're able to tell the story quite well to a particular group of people. Iviedo would be easily recognized and understood by the average Edo man or a Benin man in this situation. So for me, I wouldn't need to explain much. But they can then interpret that to their friends. At least 80% of the building will be understood by an Edo man. I hope I've answered the question. I know I kind of go all over the place, but I hope some meaning has been able to pass across. Now to your question, Dele, talking about how to bring cultural inspiration into the educational systems. The first thing is hard. It is hard. We've been working on this for a while. If you didn't know, I'm part of CPDI Africa. We're an organization who our major foreign call in life at this point in time is to create new design languages that are inspired by African identity. We've created courses. We've spoken to schools. No, we used to even visit schools. Like for real. Until recently, the NUC actually did not even give us any chance to do, or rather, did not give Nigerians a chance to have anything apart from the stipulated that was written in the guidelines for architecture learning, per se. Now, something that has happened recently is that there's now a 30% allocated to the school to put in what they feel like putting in. So we hope that some schools will start adopting things like this and including them into their education. But there's still so much groundwork to be done. And a lot of it actually stems from the system itself. The system itself is kind of rigged against cultural inspiration, and it's not just architecture. Check our history. Like if you studied history as a course in university until recently, before it was largely unrelated to us. Politics, same thing. Law. Law. My sister is a lawyer, and when I go through her books, her study guides, you find out that a lot of the references still date to begin independence in 1960. A lot of our references are even 1885 court documents from England. I'm not saying that there are no Nigerian stuff inside now, but imagine such a situation. And it's institutional. But how can we start doing this? I always say it starts with the person, it starts with you. My classmates would know that while I was in school, I was called Babalawo Architect because I intentionally, when I got that design spark to say, okay, you know what, from now on, all our designing is culturally inspired and nothing else, even if you fail. That was me. But that was a risk I took. And the beautiful thing for me was the grace of God. I was able to have lecturers who did not want to shy away from or did not want to put out that fire. They were okay with me making my own experiment and doing my own experiments. In fact, they even pushed me harder to make sure that I really, they were like, okay, you say you want to do culture, do it too. Don't cut corners. So yeah, it starts with the individual, and as that individual starts catching that flame, the flame spreads to other people. So even if it's not institutionalized, the cultural inspiration is not institutionalized, at the very least, you can have the bootleg version, the under the radar version within you and your guys, and you're like, okay, I make it a point now that anybody who I decide to mentor or who I decide to teach, I still kind of slip it into the person's thinking small and be like, Afa, have we tried putting this into your design? Have we tried thinking about this? Just to open another avenue of thought for them. And little by little drops make the ocean. I think one day we'll be able to get to a point where it's no longer in the ether, it's no longer a dream, but our reality. Thank you.
Are you done answering the question?
Yeah, so you want to say any other thing?
All right, thank you very much. And I hope that there are no other questions from anyone. Yes, so just to add to the brilliant answer that was given, at CPDI Africa, there are, just as you mentioned, that we have courses that we run independent of the conventional school system, but then you get your certificate in okay, I can see somebody says he has a question in the chat, so you can unmute your mic now and just ask your questions. If not, you might just want to type them so that we ask. But I would strongly recommend that you unmute your mic and ask the question, because we'll be rounding off any moment from now. Please go ahead.
So can you hear me, please?
Yes, you have been heard.
All right, thank you. My name is Tolu Animi Ogumbeku. I'm actually a coursemate of Yuki for our master's program, and yeah, once again, your presentation has really, hit a button inside that, I feel many architects now don't even consider some of these things you just said, such as symbolism, cultural response of our designs. And my question is just, how do we as architects, or let me say future architects, because I believe some of us here are quite young, maybe just done with our masters and just starting to enter the field properly. How can we, in our day-to-day lives and ordinary designs, such as maybe even just a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom duplex, how can we begin to implement and pay attention to the cultural and even tropical response of our designs and representations? How can I, designing a 4-bedroom duplex for a client in let's say Osun State, how can I design something that, is contemporary, but also pays like homage to where the design is being built? So that's just my question. How can we maybe, even convince our clients that, okay, see things in this side? Most people now, especially Lagos developers, basically just build white boxes and sell for billions of naira. So like how can we change that as the future of Nigerian architecture? Thank you.
Thank you for that. That was a beautiful question. The simple, straightforward answer that I'm even trying to utilize nowadays is start small. Start small. If you try and do everything at once, like the thing about it is that it's scary. That's it. That's the plain fact. It's scary. A lot of people are scared by the idea of not doing what is in vogue. A lot of people are scared of not following the crowd. So sometimes, and this is on the architect side and also on the client side, because like you are working for somebody maybe, and you now want to go and put one that decided that you want to inspire your facade to be inspired by Olokun. And the man now sees it and is a strong Christian, he's like, God forbid, no. So start small. Yeah, that's small. Maybe not that example you can say, but, start small. You can ease people into it. That's actually why I try to incorporate a lot of designs that were somewhat even contemporary in a way that, like Mr. Royal said, the layman would not even understand it at first. Like, this is just an interesting building. I wonder why they did like this. But at the end of the day, you're like, okay. So sometimes you actually have to codify it. You have to hide it under hiding, repackage it, and say, got inspired by this. You got inspired by it, but you also were inspired by this, and this. So it wasn't one thing you put in the front. So yeah, start small. A 4-bedroom home, for instance, grooves. You could start with grooves, for instance. You could start with having just a couple of grooves here, a couple of grooves there, and maybe just a small patch. A lot of people will be like, oh, okay, just basic contemporary design. But you know what you're doing, you know what you're trying to push into. And by the time you start even, you take this inch, you take this inch, you take this inch, you start pushing small. Little drops make an go. Before you know it, floodgates are open and you can do what it is that you want to do. Look at Kerry, for instance, although his theory is a bit different because he had where to start. He kind of just had it. Nobody was telling him what to do. But the buildings by Ajayi, yes, Ajayi, like his METS, Metropolitan Museum for Modern Arts, if I'm not mistaken, was inspired by the Gele. But at first, you might not understand it that way. You might just see, oh, okay, it's just this inverted pyramidal sort of thing. But when it now tells you the story behind it, you're like, okay, that's a Gele. Interesting. So that's where the creativity comes in. Remember in the toolkits, the very next thing after the inspiration source was abstraction. Abstract it, make it abstract. Instead of drawing a woman, draw a couple of boxes and put some boxes in the shape of a woman, but not actually a woman. Abstract it. That's a very, very good point to start. Abstraction. By the time you start putting all those layers into it, you find out that you not even come up with something that's very interesting and unique too, but still tells the story that you want to tell. Yeah, that's a short, straightforward answer to it. The longer answer, or the longer route, is make money and don't give a damn. So you don't have to answer to anybody. By the time you design your house, a $1 million house like that, and start a trend, people will follow you. People will definitely follow you.
Well, I think that's the part where everybody would like make money and don't give
2 cents or whatever it is anybody thinks about it. And it's actually easier that way, because when you build your own and you do it the way you want to do it, nobody has the right to say, why did you do it this way? Because I mean, I didn't come to you to get money, so you can't talk to me about it. And also,
money answer nonsense.
Yeah. Another thing again is to be so good, be indispensable to a point where whatever it is you say, it's that they take it or they find another person to. I don't know how that is going to work in this time, but I know that it is possible. Because, for example, if you really want Francis Gehry to design your building, there are things that are non-negotiable for him. And whether you like it or not, you must obey, no matter how rich.
Okay, I think he got logged out. Well, yeah, what he was saying, for someone like Francis Gehry, regardless of who you are the one who said you want Francis Gehry. Francis Gehry is going to do what Francis Gehry wants to do. And if you don't want Francis Gehry to do what he wants to do, then you shouldn't want Francis Gehry in the first case. Simple as that, bro. Yeah, it's 7:41. Time has gone. I want to thank everybody once more for making time out of their busy days. Some of you would love to be sleeping right now, but you decided that you want to come and listen to this big head talk. So thank you very much. We at CPDI Africa love you all very much. And we thank you for giving us this hour and some minutes of your evening. And we hope that for our next session, we will do better and you would also enjoy your time with us. Thank you very much, and don't forget to reach out if you have more questions. Follow us on social media, check out our website, register for a course. Please, I beg. Thank you. Good night, everyone.